Hi, and welcome to this webinar, Connecting Razor's Edge NXT to the Outside World with Sky API. My name is David Zeeben from Zeeben Development. And the idea behind this webinar is for those of you who are at the BBCon session to be able to recap and see what we talked about. And those of you who missed it, to be able to see for the first time what was talked about at the session. Of course, this isn't a live session, this is a recorded session, so hopefully all the mistakes that happen to make at the BBCon session will be cracked over and will be re-recorded so that it all runs nice and smoothly. But as such, some of the content may vary slightly. So what are we going to be talking about today? Well, we're going to have a look at how we can connect Razor's Edge NXT that is, with external applications in the cloud and online, so that we can seamlessly move data between those different platforms. Now, the first thing I'm going to ask you to do is, if you're able to, please go to browser and go to that URL, or if you have a scanner and you want to use the QR code, please do so. And just enter some very simple details about yourself in there. You'll see why later. I promise you it won't be used for anything nefarious or to sell your data on to other third parties. That will wipe the data as soon as the session is over. I'll leave that up for a few more minutes just so you can have a look, and we'll move on. We'll be showing that URL again later on in the session, so don't worry if you don't quite catch it now. So this is me, and of course if you're watching this webinar and you can't see me live, you'll realise that is, you have to be told, well, that is not actually me, that's me dressed up in some strange picture that my son decided to take of me. But I have been working with Blackboard now for many years, 16 years to be precise. I live in London. I started Zeeben Development back in 2005, working specifically with the Razor's Edge 7 desktop version, of course. The Sky or NXT was just a pipe dream. Lots of incarnations before that we perhaps have heard of. Razor's Edge 8, which never happened. Bluebird never happened, but now we are here with the reality of NXT and the Sky API. So I've been developing applications since I said 2005, amongst others Importacular and Chimpigration. I have lived in the US, where I started working in Razor's Edge, in Sweden, and also now in the UK. So that's 16 years of Razor's Edge software development I've been doing. Phew. And I'm still going. So let's have a think about the Razor's Edge 7 and what can be done with that. Obviously, that's a different technology from Sky API and NXT. But when we talk about customizations of Razor's Edge 7, what could we do? Well, to be honest with you, we could do anything almost. We could exactly almost anything. We could do plugins, and we could do applications which react to opens and closes on the Razor's Edge. We could do standalone applications. We could do web applications. Of course, none of it was very easy to do. It was all quite difficult to do. But in truth, very much could be done. Anything you could do, almost anything you could do within Razor's Edge, you could do as a standalone application. If you so desired, you could completely rewrite Razor's Edge, so it looked completely different, have a lovely interface, but use the same database underlying database. So what can be achieved with Razor's Edge 7 on hosting? That is the database view. It's really a bit different that because you're hosting by Blackboard, there's a limit to what you can work with in customizations. So what can you do? Well, typically just user-started plugins, actually, that's it. Some of the third-party Blackboard partners have plugins on the Blackboard hosted environment, as well as Blackboard having also other plugins that they've written in the past for their clients. And some of those have migrated over to the hosted environment, but not many comparatively. Obviously, there are very many more plugins in the world that haven't been migrated over to the hosted environment. So on the hosted environment, Razor's Edge 7, the database view, we're relatively limited. Obviously, Importacular is there, Chimpigration is there, amongst others. But you couldn't go away and write your own plugin and expect that to be in the hosted view. So what can be achieved in that case with Razer Edge NXT with a Sky API instead? Anything. Perfect. Well, soon anything. And I'd probably say almost anything, but soon you can do a lot with it. It's still early days. There's still a lot you can't do, but it's got a lot of power. There's a lot of resources available to writing customizations which can interact with NXT in the same way you can interact with Razer 7 database. But the truth is, in the cloud, it's much more versatile. There's a lot more you can do. So, is that the end of the session? I've told you what kind of can be done. Is that it? Well, thankfully, no. There's more that can be said, which is just well because we're only 5 minutes or so into the session. So, let's have a look at the underlying technology and the difference between the two. Razer 7 customizations was using an old technology, COM, if you're familiar with that at all. There was a requirement to install it on every machine, although if you're using Citrix, it would be a central machine, but nevertheless, you had to install it, which obviously made it a more difficult deployment. You have to, if you're a person working in the IT department, you have to go around to each workstation, installing it, making sure everyone would log off before installing the application, and have to run updates on new versions, all that kind of thing. And with the actual technology itself, there's a limited number of developers available to develop, which obviously is great for people like myself because we're in high demand. But as the organization yourself, it's tricky, it's difficult. And actually, with Razer 7 customization, the documentation is pretty poor. There's not much out there, other than a certain blog which I happen to write, and the built-in help file. How about Sky API customization? Well, it's a modern technology. I say currently there because who knows in 5 years' time, 10 years' time, what people will think of it. We're assuming it will stay pretty modern. It's pretty modern now, so we're hoping it'll stay that way. It's available in the cloud, available to anyone who has a browser, whether that's on a phone, whether it's an iPad, or whether it's on a computer. You're able to access Razer NXT. And of course, any customizations then, really. It's a much simpler deployment. There is really no deployment for you, the end user. Obviously, as a developer, can be harder. It's harder for us to having to deploy it, but that's really no concern of yours, I guess. And because it's a modern technology, there are a lot more developers around. Even though they perhaps don't know the ins and outs of Razer Edge and the Sky API, they know the technology. They know how to implement this kind of architecture and this kind of technology. So obviously, to bring themselves up to speed with Razer Edge, it's relatively straightforward for them to write these customizations. How about interoperability? Well, what does that mean? Firstly, well, that means how easy is it to connect to other systems? How is that integration going to work? Is it easy, difficult? Razer 7 normally requires a middleware to transmit web service calls. What does that mean? Well, when we have a cloud-based operation, a cloud-based application in online web application, whether it's Mailchimp, or whether it's your banking system, or whether it is Facebook or Gmail, there's always a requirement, because Razer 7 is a desktop application, to have something in between. Something which will send and receive those calls out to the cloud and bring them back into Razer 7. And of course, that's only part of the customization. Of course, that's what it does. There's no extra hosting requirement. Of course, that the customization will just sit alongside the desktop, alongside Razer Edge on the desktop with the plugin. So that's relatively straightforward. Sky API customizations. Well, it's easily accessible from cloud-based applications because the NXT is another cloud-based application. So it's just a case of transmitting data from one cloud system to another cloud system. you also need a middleware of sorts, but nevertheless it's relatively straightforward. The difference, of course, is that you need a hosting environment to do it. So you need to have that set up, whether that is a Blackboard hosted environment or whether it's something you had yourself or something from Microsoft Azure or Amazon Web Services. Any of those sort of solutions would host your solution or customization for you. How about the costs? Well, of course, the costs vary. The cost models vary very completely. When you first started working with Edge customizations, Edge 7 customizations, it tended to be a one-off cost in the same way as you purchase Razor's Edge, you purchase the application, your customization. So there'd be a one-off, either a development cost, and if talking about a product, there'd be a one-off fee to purchase the product, and there wouldn't be extra ongoing costs. Perhaps there'd be an annual maintenance fee, but there wouldn't be anything else other than that. No extra hosting requirements, so there'd be no extra cost for that. Sky API customizations, well, they tend to be, or online customizations at least, tend to be subscription-based. Now, of course, very many RE7 customizations have gone that way too, in order to make the transition from when they do go to NXT. They're also subscription-based. But typically, online customizations, online applications are subscription-based. They may have an initial setup fee as well, just to get you going, to get things set up for you. And of course, your own customizations you might write would require cloud space. As I said, Azure, AWS, etc., which need to be rented. That's that cost as well. When you subscribe to a customization, obviously that fee would cover that rented cloud space. How about the user experience? When they're using the application, what do you as the user see? How is it for you? Is it easy, a smooth transition? Is it modern feeling? Well, obviously Razor 7 when it first came out probably was very modern. It was high tech. It was, look at those windows, they're amazing. But nowadays you look at Razor 7, you think, God, it's so dated. It's really old-fashioned looking, and it's built with WinForms technology often. Now customizations are. There are alternatives, of course. There's WPF, which you can use too, and there are some web-based technology you can use within a plugin. But typically you're using WinForm technology, and that does look dated. And you can update things. You can buy components which would look better, but it's somewhat limited in the components you can use. The one very good thing that the Razor 7 customization have going for it, though, however, is the built-in Razor's Edge components. So, for example, if my customization was to look up a constituent record, I don't have to recreate the search screen that you are very familiar with. I can just simply use the built-in Razor 7 search screen for looking up constituents. And also that saves a lot of time in development, but also it makes a certain familiarity for you, the end user. You are familiar with that search screen. You know how it works. And it's built into my application, so it makes it very straightforward. So with Sky API customizations, there's obviously a larger range of web-based UI components available. There's very much anything that's ever designed out there, not just obviously for Razor's Edge, but any web-based application really. You can make use of them. It's also much easier to create beautiful software. Very nice looking. As you can see, the difference between Razor's Edge NXT and Razor's 7 is incredible. It's a much nicer user interface. And of course, with styling, it's very easy to change that to give it your own personality, if you like. So obviously, there we go. You've also now got an increase or a much better ease of use of the application because of that. Equally, there are also very many larger pre-built components for many different sectors, not just non-profits, but for-profits, where developers have put together different types of components, different grids, maybe different types of buttons, drop-downs, all sorts of things to make your web application look better, make prettier, and make it easier to use. There are also some pre-built Raised Edge components as well. That is the Sky UX. So we use with Angular JS, Angular 2, I think coming soon, so that you can make use of all those components that the Raised Edge NXT also makes use of. But there aren't as many as there have been in the Raised Edge 7, at least for search screens and the like. So what about architecture? What can we do with our customizations? Well, in Raised Edge 7 we have plugins. Those are probably the most familiar type of customizations, where you go to the plugins area of Raised Edge and you click on a link and it brings up a new mini application within Raised Edge. But you can also have desktop applications. You can have applications that you can start from the desktop. Have a shortcut there, and you can run an application just as you would start any other application. And they'll read data from Raised Edge, and they'll push data back into Raised Edge and interact with Raised Edge as an application that you expect it to do so. You can also have event-driven customizations, so otherwise perhaps known as VBA macros. What does that mean? Well, it means that when you go perhaps to save a constituent, all of a sudden the Raised Edge will say, is anybody listening to this save? Does anybody want to know about it? Yes, that application over there does. I'll tell that application, I'll send him a message, and he can react to it. So for example, looking at our application audit trail, whenever somebody opens up a record, it takes a snapshot of all the fields, because the VBA macro has said, I'm listening, I want to hear about the record being opened. And then equally on save, it's listening and it says, tell me about the save, what's going on, which fields have been changed. And it does a comparison and then saves it to the database. So that's a Raised Edge 7 customization. As I said earlier, that type of customization didn't make it into the Blackwell hosted Raised Edge 7. So only the plugins are in there. So how about Sky API customizations? Well, we've talked about web applications where we can see the flow of data between two systems. And they work in a very similar way, or very similar architecture, very similar to plugins, in as much that it's an application and data flows from one to the other on demand. You click on a button or you perform some steps and that data will flow. Then we also have in-application customizations. So what I mean by that is possibly tiles within the main constituent record or within a different area of NXT, where we can use those tiles to display external data. We're not quite there yet. Those are in the pipeline. We know that there is a beta version of that, and in fact, by the time you see this after BBCon, it may well be they've released it. But we're not quite there at the time of recording this webinar. And webhooks. Those correspond to the VBA macros, so they say, well, I'm listening for a change to the record. File or send information to this URL when the record is saved. And a certain URL in the cloud will receive information about that saving of a record. And that, of course, is how we would do audit trail, but that with Sky API. But that, of course, is much later. There's no obvious timeline for that implementation, and there's a lot to happen with Sky API before we get to that. So at this point of the session, we're going to move over to some live demonstrations. And of course, fingers crossed everything works well, but we'll see. So the first live demo we're going to show you today is a port of existing functionality in Raised Edge 7 over to Raised Edge NXT. So what we see in front of us are two screens from Raised Edge 7 from default sets. Now, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the default sets in Raised Edge 7, but what this functionality allows you to do is to take an empty or somewhat empty Raised Edge record and populate it with some default values. So that might be constituent codes, it might be title, or any other sort of fields that are listed here. What we've gone ahead and done now is to create a relatively simple, a simplified version of this functionality, but for NXT. So if I go to firstly, let me go to my constituent record, and we'll have a look here now. So we see in this record that we have a volunteer constituent code. Just have my name here. I have some basic information, address information, cover custom fields, that kind of thing. And what I'm going to do is apply a default set that I've created previously to this. Now, of course, the prototype that I developed, or we developed for this, looks very different from the Raise Edge 7, and of course it would be. It's a web-based application, and we've styled it very differently as well. So let's have a look at that now. So we can see this is our default set application. We can search by ID or by name the individual, and we can apply one of these predefined default sets here as well, and we can update and add new ones as well using this setup button. So let's go ahead and search for my records. So it just happens the first one on the list, and we'll tick that. So we can see that we are working with my record here, and we're going to work with the board member default set. So we'll select the title, and we'll select a gender, and we've already got some default sets here, individual donor board member, which will be applied to my record. And in this case, it's very simple, it's straightforward, just apply default sets here. And there we go, it says it's been updated. So now we can open that session up in NXT. We already have it open, but if I go into it again, it'll give us a refreshed screen. And when it's finished loading, we can now see that we've been applied the name Mr. We have also now this individual donor and one more, which is board member. There we go. So we've gone ahead and applied our default set. So again, very straightforward, very simple functionality just to apply default set. And of course, if we'd wanted to, we could have expanded it to include other areas such as custom fields and other contact information, for example, as well. But just a very simple example to show you how we can apply this information to our records. So you may well be familiar with our product integration, which connects Raise Edge 7 with Mailchimp. That's typically seen on the database view or the classic traditional Raise Edge 7 desktop application. And it's seen quite typically as a plugin on there. So what we have there is a desktop application connecting to Mailchimp, which is a web-based, cloud-based application. And we have a series of pushes and pulls of data from the plugin, from Integration, out to Mailchimp. We also have what we call Integration View, which is a VBA macro. It doesn't react on opening or closing a record, but rather it manifests itself by having a toolbar button on the record. And we'll have a look at that in a minute. We decided to port this as a first stage of porting the whole application over to NXT. This is the first stage of it. So what we have is a Chrome extension. I think I mentioned earlier that it will be possible in the near future to have a tile sitting within the main constituent record. And that's obviously much more an ideal scenario, so we have that data straight in on the record itself, rather than having a Chrome extension which has to install separately. But what I'm going to show you is that scenario where we have the Chrome extension. But first, let me just show you how it works currently with the Raise Edge 7. So if I just bring up my constituent record here. So I have a record here, and I have a number of email addresses here. If I then go to the toolbar here, the macro button, view on Mailchimp, which I have here. If I start that, it should appear somewhere shortly. Let's see. And so let's drag that over. So we can see that if on this email address and this list, there's no activity, but if I select a different list, we can see there's plenty of activity going on here, saying that I opened this email, and it was sent this email, this time and date. Earlier on, I clicked on a link on the furniture email. So there's also activity of what we have to do within this list. It just tells me I have a 5-star rating, and when it was added and last modified, and my status. So it's a very simple overview of my status and my activity on Mailchimp. And of course, I could bring this up for any constituent who has a list, who's on a list in Mailchimp. So now we'll take a look at the corresponding customization in NXT in the browser. So back in my window here, now this is the extension, I have to activate it. I only turned it off, not to spoil the surprise earlier. So I'll turn it back on again. Back on. If we now refresh this page, it should start. We can see the outline of it starting. As the page finishes, we should see that refresh entirely. In a normal scenario, this would be switched on always, and as we go to a page, it would itself start out with activity. Now, I might just do search this page again, because it tends to only work when I land on a page rather than when I just open up one. So here we go. It's now refreshing activity, and we see, in this case, a different email address. So let's have a look. If we go to, just to bear in mind that this isn't exactly the same record that we saw in Raise Edge 7, because this is NXT, and we can't have our macro window on our Raise Edge 7 on the hosted version of it. So, but in the same way, we have in this case, we have all our lists. So if I can draw down to my, let's see, my email, the furniture one. We can see that I clicked on the furniture link there, and what else have I got? Let's see. We'll have a look at all. We can see that I clicked on open this email, and I was sent another one. I got my links here. So it's essentially containing the very same information that is on the macro window. And of course, we could build this out with all the ratings and with all the other information. And as I said, an ideal situation, this would sort of sit within one of these tiles here and show the same information, but also we can minimize that. It just slides in. But clearly, when this is becomes available, we will port the integration view over to a tile. Now, there's a lot of flexibility here. We can show exactly the same information that we have on our integration view window, but within a tile. You can make it look in a very similar format to the existing window using the Sky UX that has the components, uses the same components that the Blackboard uses. So it looks very similar, has a similar look and feel, and doesn't feel as a separate application. So that's an overview of the integration view. So earlier in the session, I asked you if you would be so kind as to enter some data via an online URL I gave out. Just submit some personal information that we could then sell on to third parties. No, not at all. We're not about to make use of that data just yet. We will do shortly, but what I'm going to show you instead, and by the way, if you haven't already entered that information, it's not too late to go ahead and do so now. What I'm going to go and show you now is how we can make use of Wufoo with an online form creation site. We've created a form, and that form will collect data, and that data will then flow seamlessly into the raised edge, or at least that's the plan. Let's hopefully it will go from Wufoo into raised edge. So let's bring up my online form. I'm going to go to the URL here now. And we're going to enter, hopefully, a fictitious name, Chris Miller, and we'll just use his same name, email address, and we'll make up a phone number as well. And now when I press submit, hopefully that's working as magic. It's moving from Wufoo through the cloud out to Raised Edge. So now when I go into the Raised Edge, hopefully it's had some time to work its magic. And when I start entering the details of the person, it will hopefully find it. There we go, Chris Miller. So if I now open up his record, you can see a very sparse record because I only entered a few data points here. You see his name, and we see his email address down here, and phone number. So it's a very simple and straightforward way of getting data from an online form into the Raised Edge. Now, obviously, we could make that form as complicated as we wanted to. We could have included a title, we could have included constituent code information, not necessarily visible, because in our customization we could have said, fine, anyone who comes through our Wufoo form should have a constituent code of online donor or online subscriber or whatever that might be as default information. So really the sky is the limit in terms of getting data from an online service such as Wufoo into Raised Edge. But this gives you a very simple overview, and we'll be taking a look at that later with some of the data you've entered. So we are out and about, and it's now time to visit our constituents. Of course, we could look up our constituents on Raised Edge on our mobile phone. But what then? We have to sort of manually type in the address into our sat nav and our GPS system, and take us to the address we want to go to. Wouldn't it be nicer if we could integrate Raised Edge with Waze? So for this live demonstration, I'm going to connect my mobile phone to the screen. Hopefully, let's see how that goes. And I'll show you how we can use a connection to Waze and Raised Edge to find out the address of where we're going. So let us bring up our phone here. So let me just, okay. I will go to Chrome, and I will go to my Waze NXT. So here I have an app which I'm going to now use. I'm going to search for, let's search for Windsor again. And here we go. We have an address here in Texas. We have one in London, the Queen. Now, of course, I am currently presenting or recording this webinar in London. So probably sensible for me to press the London address. If I were in the US, I'd press the US address, just because Waze won't take you on a route abroad, overseas. So let me press the Elizabeth Windsor. So I press this, and it'll take me into Waze. It's connecting. It's working out exactly where to go. And it's taking me to Buckingham Palace. I think that's where we want to go. We're going to go and see my latest constituent, the Queen. So then that's perfect. When I'm ready to go, I can drive off to my location.
Let's take A41 South Hendon Way and A41 Finchley Road, St John's Wood.
Got it. Okay, perfect. So you can see it's very straightforward. I have a very simple app which allows me to search for a constituent and then bring up their address. It's a simple search in Razor's Edge, and allows you to search and go to navigate to their address just by pressing a button. So in our office, we have this phone. We have a couple of phones actually, but this is the SNOM 320. It is a VoIP phone, and really quite fond of it, really. So I mean, it works very well to accept incoming calls, and you can make calls. No different from many phones, really. What you can also do is you can have two lines in it. So we have a UK phone number, and we also have a US phone number. So when we're receiving calls from the US, those in the US only have to dial a local number, or a national number rather, and those in the UK only have to dial a UK number. So it's very convenient, really. We also have the SNOM 300, and I'm really quite fond of both of these phones. They are very close to my heart. Here we see, SNOM on a beach, for example. There's a lovely phone when I took my SNOM on holiday with me. And here we have some people using a SNOM. Nobody in our office, but they're using the SNOM. Now, where am I going with this? What's the point of this? Well, I was thinking, wouldn't it be great if when the phone rings, we can see automatically who it is that's calling, or we have that in the call display, we can see the phone number. But more to the point, wouldn't it be better if we could see where they're calling from, which organization, and obviously if you're a non-profit, how much they've given in the past, and perhaps some notes about them, whether they're a major donor or not. So essentially, wouldn't it be great if when the phone rings, we just see straight into Razor's Edge, just a pop-up window would appear, and that's what we would see. And then it's got me tinkering with my SNOMs, really. And I can able to see that I can put code into the back end of them. I can write code which will connect the SNOM telephone to Razor's Edge. There's a control panel, there's a settings area of the SNOM which you can put a URL in there, which will be called when the phone is dialed, when the incoming call comes in, and it'll pass through the phone number. Now, of course, my office SNOMs are far too precious. As you've seen the lovely photographs already, they're far too precious for me to bring with me to this session in the US today. So what I'm going to do is simulate a SNOM. Now, I have another phone. There we go. There's someone very laid back using a SNOM as well. I have a simulated phone. That's not it on the picture now. Just to warn you, that's not the phone we're going to be using. I have this phone here. I'll just bring it across. Which looks nothing like the phones we use in the office. But what it is what's called a soft phone. So it's a phone which works on a computer. And works exactly the same way. I can dial out, I can receive calls, I can put people on hold. I can do everything like I want to do with my SNOM phone. And what is more, I can also program it so that when someone dials in, it can also be set up to answer the call and to display a web page. Now, obviously, if this were the live session in front of the audience, I would ask somebody to call in. We have a number there, but of course, I'm sitting here recording this webinar by myself, and I'm going to have to do that myself. I'm going to have to call in myself. So what I'm going to do is I have also another phone of sorts, a Google Hangouts phone, which I can just type in the number here, and it will then proceed to call my Z phone. Now, this whole process goes quite quickly, so let me just explain what's going to happen before it actually happens. I am dial the number. I'm going to make the call. My Z phone, or I'm going to make the call from my Google Hangouts phone. Here, I'll type the number in. I'll just do that now. 845 470 54. No, that's wrong. 845 470 0664. So then, let's just see if that is there. If I then press the call button, that will then dial my Z phone here. The call will go through. I'll hang up pretty quickly because I don't want to have to answer it. And then my record, because this is my number, the Google Hangouts number that I'm calling from, will appear in a browser. So let's give it a go and see what happens, shall we? All right, I'm going to call now. Okay, I'll add that. So it is going to call. There we go. Oh, and there it appears. I'm just going to switch off this and hang up there. But as we can see in the background, my browser is starting up my record, hopefully. There we go. You see now we appear my record in Razer. So perfect, really. I can see as I call in from my Google Hangout phone number, I can answer it and I can start speaking, and whilst it's speaking, it'll in the background load up my Razer Edge record, and I can take details from them, or I can update their data, or I can see, oh, this is a major donor, and I should obviously treat them more carefully than I would otherwise. So that's just a nice little integration that we wrote to connect the SNOM phone, or indeed this soft phone. But I'm very well aware that it works very nicely with other phones, with Cisco phones, with other brands of leading phones, but the majority of VoIP phones have the capability where you can insert some code or insert a URL into the phone, essentially into the back end of the phone, which will be called when the phone is answered. It's a nice little integration there. So we're now moving on to the last live demonstration of the session, and that is integration with Evernote. Now, I'm very well aware that the Razer Edge has its own built-in notes, and it's very straightforward just to connect to Razer Edge on your phone or tablet or on your computer and start writing notes about an individual or constituent. And then obviously they'll be there directly on the record without a problem. But of course, maybe you or your directors or somebody else in your organization is keen on Evernote and they're stuck using Evernote. Maybe they have a history of writing on Evernote and they want to carry on using that. So in this case, it's very straightforward to use this application we've built to link your Evernote records, your Evernote note-taking, with a constituent record in Razor's Edge. So that's what I'm going to show you a demo of now. So let's go back to the browser. And if I show you my Evernote account, so I have some party recipes, I have a to-do list. Perhaps most importantly, I have some information about one of my favorite hobbies at the moment, the royal family in the UK. So I've copied over a biography of Elizabeth from Wikipedia. And just so happens that she's become one of our donors, which is obviously very useful. But I'd like to add this bio that I have here into Razor's Edge. So how do I go about doing that? Well, I'm going to show you a little application that we put together, which will do just that. So if we go over to my Evernote application here. So what we have here is a very straightforward application. On the left-hand side, we have a list of the notes. Now, of course, we could search for notes here as well. So if I wanted to just search for, I had lots of notes, I would search for the one about Elizabeth Windsor. And then likewise, we're going to search for my Elizabeth Windsor constituents as well. And there we go. There's two constituents there. Obviously, the second one is the Queen. So all I have to do now is just click on this side and click on this side. I'm going to edit a title here. Perhaps just put in, there we go. And when I now do add, that will add that biography as an attachment. Now we can go into my Razor's Edge instance and have a look at that record. Click on this link here, and we'll start up, go straight to the constituents record for the Queen. So we can see Elizabeth Windsor, preferred name Queen, and we have here, we have previous biography as well. But if we just click on this now, you can see that we have that very same boundary directly in Razor's Edge, a link to the Evernote note we can see. And of course, this is very useful, for any kind of note. It wouldn't have to be about the Queen necessarily, but any of your constituents, if you're taking notes or if you're copying and pasting information from a website into Evernote, it's a perfect way of linking in that data source. And that was the last live demo we have for the session. Of course, at this point of the session, I would ask the audience if they have any questions for me. But of course, that goes for you people listening to the webinar too. If you have any questions, please feel free to email me or get in contact via the other methods too. Only happy to answer your questions. Take a look at our website, www.zeidman.info. That's zeidman.info. And to check out our products and services and get in contact us through that website too. Thank you very much for your time today listening to this webinar, and hopefully we'll be in contact soon.